Welcome to Inside South Union Township here on the South Union Township Network. Inside South Union Township is brought to you as a joint cooperative venture featuring Township Supervisors Bob Schiffbauer, Rick Vernon and Jason Scott, Atlantic Broadband Cable, Armstrong Cable, and our friends at CUTV, including Gary Smith. We're continuing our COVID-19 program series here today, and joining us is Congressman Guy Reschenthaler, who represents Pennsylvania's 14th Congressional District, including Washington, Fayette, and Greene County, also portions of Westmoreland County. Guy, we appreciate you taking the time to join us here today.
Brian, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It's certainly a crazy time for everybody right now with the COVID-19 pandemic and the outbreak across not only the country, but worldwide as well.
It certainly is. And we've got to look at this in two ways. One, we have the public health crisis. And then two, we have the fiscal challenges, the economic impact, which cannot be overstated.
For sure. You're definitely right on that. First off, before we get into the COVID-19 and coronavirus, tell us a little bit about yourself and give us a little bit of background on Guy Reschenthaler.
Sure. And Brian, please, throughout the interview, just call me Guy. I'd appreciate it. Well, so just my background, I'm born and raised in southwestern Pennsylvania, went to Duquesne for law school, and I was fortunate because in law school, I got to pursue what was really a lifelong goal of becoming an officer in the U.S. Navy JAG Corps. Went into the JAG Corps right after I graduated from law school. I was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. I volunteered actually to deploy to Baghdad, Iraq. I prosecuted terrorists in the Iraqi court system using Iraqi law in front of Iraqi judges through an interpreter. I did that, came back to Norfolk, got a case with some Navy SEALs that were falsely accused of abusing the Butcher of Fallujah. So went back to Iraq to defend the lead petty officer on that case. He was the first one tried. He got a full acquittal and went right back into the SEAL teams. Really proud of that. And then I wrapped up my time in the Navy as the officer in charge of Texas and Oklahoma. Moved back to southwestern Pennsylvania. I was a district judge and then a state senator, and now I'm in Congress.
Hey, you're sworn into office in early 2019, and I know you've certainly been busy since this coronavirus pandemic started here in mid-March.
Certainly busy. The whole term, Brian, has been incredibly busy. I came into office during the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. We had impeachment. We had the killing of Soleimani and the issues with Iran. We've had issues with North Korea and now this pandemic. So it's been an absolute whirlwind. I'm very thankful to be in office. It's an absolute privilege and an honor to serve. And I think that my past experience, my skill sets really set me up to do good things in Congress.
And you've certainly done a nice job trying to represent your constituents here through the just over a year or so that you've been in office. And you look at this coronavirus outbreak started in mid-March. What have you seen so far? What legislation have you passed here over the last 6 to 7 weeks since this all started?
Well, Congress has had 4 phases right now. We had phase 1, 2, then phase 3 was the CARES Act, and then we just passed phase 3.5, which augmented phase 3. And I could talk about what was in that, but that is what we've done in response. I personally have also introduced a bill that's targeted at defunding the World Health Organization, which mishandled and totally botched this pandemic. I think they were negligent, or at worst, they were coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party to underplay this virus and allow it to spread outside of Wuhan. That resolution has been introduced. It has not yet been adopted, but I'm going to advocate for it to be adopted. I'm going to advocate to hold China responsible for allowing this virus to spread beyond Wuhan.
So I would think that you certainly support President Donald Trump's decision then to defund the WHO.
Absolutely. And can I just say this, Brian? It's not just about defunding the World Health Organization. It's about trying to reform the World Health Organization. At best, it's an international institution that's working to stop these kind of pandemics. Unfortunately, the United States pays roughly 25% or just under 25% of the entire World Health Organization budget. And most of that we pay voluntarily. Every nation is assessed as a proportion of their GDP, what they have to pay into that organization. We pay the lion's share, and then we go above and beyond and pay even more than our assessed amount we have to pay in. Yet despite that, China is able to manipulate the World Health Organization, handpick Dr. Tedros to lead it. And then they, I think, coordinated with the World Health Organization to, one, not label this a pandemic until mid-March, and two, continue this lie early on that this virus only spread animal to human and not human to human, thereby allowing it to spread out of Wuhan and across the world. And I could talk about that and give more details, but it's really shameful what the World Health Organization did. So we need to reform it. And if they refuse to reform, we should take that money and move it elsewhere to other organizations that are actually promoting health around the world.
What are your constituents telling you?
They're all for defunding the World Health Organization. They think it's patently unfair that their hard-earned tax dollars are going to fund an organization that does nothing but parrot the talking points of the Chinese Communist Party. And they feel that this international organization, as well as others, have really taken advantage of the United States. And when these organizations are taking advantage of the United States, they're really taking advantage of the hardworking men and women in Middle America.
We talked about some of the legislation that was passed. Of course, some of that was the CARES Act, which started in mid-March. You have the PPP program, which small businesses have been fighting for dollars, and the EIDL, a portion of that as well. And of course, also your constituents and those statewide able to get some extended unemployment benefits. Talk about the CARES Act and how the whole process has gone since it was first introduced and then passed.
Absolutely, Brian. Well, the CARES Act gave us a lot. It gave us the Paycheck Protection Program, which was incredibly successful. And that I would also include in there the EIDL loans and grant programs, which allows small businesses to get up to $10,000 cash advance, and up to $10,000 can be forgiven as a grant. Then the PPP loans, or low interest rates, they were originally set at 0.5%. I think they can go up to 4% given the situation. But the Treasury Department estimates that PPP and EIDL has saved over 30 million American jobs. That's incredible. It also, as you had mentioned, it extends unemployment benefits. It gives an additional $600 per week to individuals, and it expands unemployment compensation to those that are self-employed, to those that are independent contractors, 1099 employees, the folks that are in the so-called gig economy. It allows them to go to the unemployment compensation system to help weather this virus.
And of course, we got some additional funding for that earlier on this week.
We did. So the PPP program and the EIDL loan and grant program was so successful that it ran out of money about 2 weeks after its passage. And that, we're talking substantial amounts of money. We funded that to the tune of $250 billion, and that's billion with a B. It ran out of money. So when Congress came back and passed what's referred to as phase 3.5, Congress added $310 billion into those into just PPP, an additional $60 billion, and again that's billion with a B, into the EIDL grant and loan program. And I think the money is really necessary because it's helping small employers continue to pay their employees, which is taking the burden off the unemployment compensation system. But also, and this cannot be underrated, it's helping the employers and the employees stay connected. So when we start to open up this economy and get back to work, there's a workforce there and there's a small business there to employ individuals, give them jobs, and provide goods and services that this economy is going to need in the not so near future, in the not so distant future, I should say, yes.
And of course, the PPP program goes through the local banks. What's the best way for some folks out there, if they haven't applied, you really have to get on the horn because this is going to go fast even through the second round for both the PPP and the EIDL, which I believe actually goes through the SBA website. Is that correct?
Yes. So the best way to get the PPP loans is to go to the bank that you do business with. It's the quickest way to get the loans, and that's because your information is already with that lending institution, so the money can come faster. Also, for the EIDL grant programs, the EIDL loan programs, the SBA is a great resource. If you are having a hard time with this program as a small business owner, or if you're an individual that's having issues with unemployment compensation, don't hesitate to contact my office or the office of your local state rep or state senator, because we're standing by ready to help, ready to assist.
Yeah, I saw earlier in the week the EIDL program on their website, they still weren't accepting new applications. Has that changed at this time?
I believe that it has, or it should quickly change. This is a program that's incredibly important. I believe that it is issuing grants and loans right now. There were some problems originally. I don't want to fault anybody for that. This legislation came out fast and furious because we needed to get money into the economy and we needed to get money to those that need it. So it was not perfect. There were some kinks, but we're working those out.
Where do you think we should proceed right now as far as reopening the economy? We should hear tomorrow from Governor Wolf as far as areas of the state that are going to be allowed to reopen. What are some of your thoughts on where we should try to get started and try to get things back up and running again?
Well, let me just say this. I think that Governor Wolf was too restrictive. Early on, he even wanted to shut down coal mining operations. I wrote a letter to make sure that we changed that, and thankfully the Wolf administration listened to that letter and allowed coal mines to stay operational. As any coal miner knows, some of these mines are the size of Manhattan, and you have less than 100 coal miners in this area. That to me is the definition of social distancing. So coal mines should have remained open. One thing that the governor did that I'm happy that he listened to a letter that I actually led a bipartisan delegation letter to reopen online car sales and construction. I think that a lot of these outdoor construction sites should have remained open. And the fact that Pennsylvania is the 5th largest state population, but is #1 in unemployment claims, just shows you that our restrictions were too severe. And I'm glad that we're looking to ease the restrictions and open back up. Now, with that said, I think that when we do reopen, we need to be thoughtful, we need to be strategic, we've got to be methodical, and we need to look at the areas that have low density of population, perhaps open those areas up first, even on a municipality by municipality decision level. And then we have to look at the different sectors of the economy and put in some common sense provisions. For example, if a restaurant reopens, we need to be smart about it, maybe have every other table occupied, limit the groups to no more than 3 people, let's say. But we've got to be thoughtful, strategic. We've got to look out for public health on the one hand, but we have got to get Americans back to work on the other.
You mentioned online car sales. They're underway right now. Construction starts May 1st. Also, some outdoor activities, including golf courses, able to reopen up on May the 1st as well. So I'm sure that'll be good for a lot of these areas and a lot of these industries that really have been struggling.
It certainly is. A lot of these industries and sectors of the economy are struggling. And when these businesses struggle, the employees struggle, and that creates an entire lag in our economy. So as we start to reopen, we need to make sure that we have a quick and strong recovery and get back to the red hot economy that we had before this virus hit the United States.
What other areas or industries have you seen statewide that have really been struggling or inside your congressional district?
Well, there really haven't been too many industries that have not been hit. The entertainment industry, the gaming industry. People don't realize that Pennsylvania is the 2nd largest gaming state, and this industry has been devastated. And say what you might about casinos, but when a casino takes a hit, it's the surrounding businesses that take a hit. The florist that provides all the flowers for the receptions or the meetings of that casino. It's the surrounding businesses, the hotels have taken a hit, and that's tied to gaming. But also the entire hotel and lodging industry is taking a hit. The restaurant industry is taking a hit. You mentioned golf courses are able to reopen, but think about all the private gyms, and that's not even to mention the energy sector is taking a hit, and of course construction is taking a big hit. I'm skeptical if construction ever should shut down. If you're on a construction site, particularly outside construction, you're already social distancing in these construction sites. So we've got to get Americans back to work. We've got to unchain this economy and get back to what was that red hot Trump economy.
And I think you're also going to see the state taking a hit as well. You look at the casino industry, which you mentioned, they pay a pretty high tax to the state. And you look at all the casinos, as you mentioned, that we have statewide, and then you see the turnpike as well, with travel being down, I believe, 60% so far since this started. I think you're going to see the state on a whole take a hit.
You are. Our revenue is going to decrease in the state of Pennsylvania, obviously because of this virus, but also because of the draconian measures that the Wolf administration took and that the far left Democrats promoted. So revenue is going to dip. And you mentioned our toll system. When we don't have folks traveling, we don't have individuals paying tolls, we don't have people using gas, we're not getting the gas tax, which is going to maintain our roads and bridges. So that's going to take quite a hit too. I think that we're going to see the ramifications of this virus well into the future. That's why we've got to reopen, get revenue increase into the state, and try to get this economy back to normal.
What has your office been doing to help folks out with some of these federal issues?
Well, we've been working nonstop. I for one, have been doing tons of Skype meetings, conference calls, sometimes through all day, and rightfully so. The voters put me in office to advocate for them, to do this job, and even though I can't do it face to face, I'm still continuing to do it through social distancing measures. And my staff has been working around the clock. We've been making sure that folks that have unemployment compensation claim issues get the resources they need. We've been working with businesses to make sure they know how to navigate the PPP and EIDL loan and grant program. And we've been just every day I talk with a different sector of the economy, industry leaders, constituents, to see what we can do in DC to, one, protect the health and safety of the American people, but also, again, get this economy back to normal.
How tough has it been for you adjusting to doing a lot of these things? I assume you're probably working remotely, working from home from time to time instead of being in your office. How have you been able to overcome some of those challenges?
It's been challenging, but I think we've adapted. And I think, there's a saying, champions adjust. And my office has certainly adjusted. We've been doing as many meetings as we can through Zoom, from Skype, on conference calls, to make sure that we still have connectivity with constituents. I think that's going fairly well. I'm of course old school. I'd still like to have face-to-face meetings, but this is the best we can do. We're still being effective and efficient, and still working hard to make sure the constituent needs are being met.
Yeah, I think everyone's adjusted to working remotely. You mentioned some of the areas you've been working on over the next couple of weeks. What are some other areas you're going to try to dip into here to try to get everybody working again in Pennsylvania?
Well, we're looking at a possible phase 4. I'm advocating that we take a wait and see approach, though, to phase 4, because we've got to see how phase 3 and 3.5 works. A lot of the money that was appropriated in 3.5 in particular has not been dispersed. So we should wait to see how this money is dispersed, what areas, what programs we created need extra funding, and then adjust from there. Also looking forward, if there is a phase 4, we should include a transportation and infrastructure package. We've got roads and bridges that are literally crumbling. They're going to need to be improved upon, expanded. And I think the transportation is a role for the federal government. We should also take a look at our waterways. Our locks and dams, particularly in Western Pennsylvania, are vital to our economy and to move and to keeping the economy humming. So we've got to look at some of these locks that have not been really taken care of. Some of them were built in the 20s and 30s. So we need new locks, we need new dams. And let's not forget about rural broadband. If this pandemic has taught us one thing, it's the importance of internet connectivity. So if we can expand rural broadband into rural areas, we need to include that in a transportation and infrastructure package. But along with that, I also think that we need to take a lot of the deregulation that we've seen over the last few weeks, and we need to carry that forward. And we need to make some of the tax cuts permanent so these businesses can get back on their feet. For example, a payroll tax holiday would not only help the employer, it would also help the employees. So we've got to look at those common sense provisions and steps that we can do to put more money in the pockets of the employees and the employers to get this economy back to normal.
You mentioned the rural broadband. I think some legislation was actually passed earlier this week in Greene County, which is certainly a part of your area as well, to try to expand it out there, because there are some very rural areas out in Greene County where they've certainly lacked that connectivity.
Absolutely. And that's why we need to make sure rural broadband is included in any kind of transportation and infrastructure package, whether it's a standalone package or if it's part of a phase 4.
And you look at coronavirus here locally inside your district. If you go back since Saturday in both Fayette and Greene County, just one new case reported in each county. So it certainly seems like we're making progress as far as flattening the curve and stopping the spread here locally.
We certainly have flattened the curve here in Western Pennsylvania. We've been very fortunate. We've still had some deaths, and one life lost is certainly a tragedy. And we've had several losses due to corona, which is a shame. But it does seem like we have flattened the curve. Our hospitals were not overwhelmed like they were in nations like Italy and Spain. So that is good. And that's why we can take a look at now loosening the restrictions and getting back to some sort of normalcy.
I think a lot of these hospitals are going to need help as well, because we certainly had some coronavirus patients being treated, but they were not able to do elective procedures for a long period of time. And of course, that's where a lot of the hospitals make their money. So what do you see being done to help out some of these rural hospitals, or these hospitals statewide, because I think they've all taken a hit?
Brian, you're right. They took a big hit because any elective surgery was banned, unless it was an emergency procedure, of course. But that's a huge revenue stream for our hospitals. So in phase 3.0, there was 100 billion, and that's again billion with a B, $100 billion appropriated for hospitals. Only 30 billion of which has been distributed. In phase 3.5, we put in an additional $75 billion for hospitals, and we included 25 billion for testing. So there is money appropriated for these hospitals, and the Treasury Secretary is dispersing this money that Congress appropriated.
What do you expect to see from the governor tomorrow when he makes his announcements as far as which areas can go yellow? And do you think this is going to be done on a county-by-county basis? Originally, he'd introduced some regions throughout the state, which I think a lot of folks are pretty upset about, because you had a lot of these rural counties being grouped in with Pittsburgh. What do you expect the governor is going to do tomorrow?
Well, I would like to see a more nuanced approach. I think that the regional approach is too broad. I don't like one-size-fits-all solutions because, as you know, in government, everything is local. I think that we should look at municipality by municipality circumstances. So not even county by county. I'm serious about looking municipality by municipality, looking at the population density, looking at the number of cases, an example, and then taking a very thoughtful, methodical, and nuanced approach to opening up economy. What the governor is going to do, I'm not sure, but I would be a champion for a very nuanced reopening that allows Americans to safely get back to work.
What are your thoughts as well on the statewide face mask use? We've seen some differing opinions there as well about the constant use of the face mask, maybe cutting down on some immunity. If this continues to go on for a long period of time, what are your thoughts on how we should progress here over the next couple of weeks as far as the mandatory face masks?
Well, the experts are going back and forth on these face masks. At first, we heard they didn't do anything, and then we heard that everyone needed a face mask. I think the best thing to do is err on the side of caution and assume that if you're not protecting yourself, at least you're protecting others if you are a carrier of the coronavirus. So it seems like a very small ask to wear a face mask. If it does nothing, the worst thing you did was put on a face mask. But if it helps save lives and get this economy back to normal, then let's wear them until the science proves otherwise. But right now, there's so much conflicting information from the experts. Let's just err on the side of caution.
And of course, many of us would like to see a possible vaccine or some development as far as detection to tell if you could possibly be immune to coronavirus and COVID-19. What are you hearing on your end as far as the progress that's being made on that front?
Well, vaccines take a long time to develop. I think there's some talk about a vaccine coming out in September. With the evidence I'm seeing, I'm not sure how you even get to a vaccine by September. That's a rush. Usually it takes over a year to develop a vaccine, and that's even working at a breakneck speed. Testing, of course, we need more testing. However, testing is not the end-all be-all, because you can have an individual that tests negative day one, day two, he or she contracts it, goes about thinking that they do not have it, and then infects a bunch of people after they've contracted it after the testing. That's a problem. We also can look at testing antibodies, but there's still not proof that you're immune. Once you've had it, you can still get a second wave. And as we know, viruses mutate very quickly. The common cold, for example, mutates several times, sometimes in the course of even a season. So if COVID-19 mutates, you may not have the antibodies for the mutated version of COVID-19. So I think that we've got to do whatever we can to develop a vaccine, develop testing, see if the antibody creates an immunity and move forward. We should certainly do that, but we need to use caution when doing this. I will say this. The people that are going to develop this vaccine are not going to be the countries that have universal health care, government-controlled health care. you're going to likely see the United States or Israel create the vaccine, because we have cutting edge technology and we are working on a free market system, which is always going to put our healthcare system and our pharmaceutical industry on the cutting edge of the world.
Guy, we appreciate you taking the time to join us. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with here today?
I would just like to say this, America is going to emerge from this stronger than ever. We got to remember that we've been through 2 world wars. We've been through a Great Depression. We had the Spanish influenza. We can get through this, and no virus is strong enough to kill the American dream.
Guy, we appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you, Brian. Take care.
You've been watching Inside South Union Township here on the South Union Township Network. Inside South Union Township brought to you as a joint cooperative venture featuring Township Supervisors Bob Schiff-Bauer, Rick Vernon, and Jason Scott, Atlantic Broadband Cable, Armstrong Cable, and our friends at CUTV, including Gary Smith. For Congressman Guy Reschenthaler and Jerry Dupay, this is Brian Morozak. Have a great day.